question that's being asked right now is how interested someone like you might be in the number 2 spot if you were to be offered that spot.
Well, not nearly as interested as I would be in the number 1 spot. But you know, let's face it, if a person runs for president, you certainly believe you should do that job. If you're asked to be vice president, you certainly believe you could do that job. I haven't been asked, may never be. But it's not something that people go and campaign for, but it's not something that people turn down either.
You haven't been asked, but have you had any kind of preliminary conversations with Senator McCain or his staff or anyone within the GOP?
No, I have not. And you know, I don't know what his process will be. And so I'm not sitting around thinking that that's going to happen. I have serious doubts. I think an excellent relationship. It's just that I'm not one that has any illusions that he has some obligation to me. And there are a lot of people who he may feel more obliged to, and I just understand how that works.
Would you accept if he outright asked it?
He hasn't, so let me not go on saying, oh, I'm happy to be the date to the homecoming when, I haven't been asked yet.
Unlike Ronald.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things, you certainly always would consider that an honor to be asked, but that's his decision to make. I'm going to support him. I'm going to support whoever he picks. And I don't want to be in a position of picking myself and him not picking me and then acting like, gee, he should have picked me. That's his decision. I have no interest in, some cabinet or anything like that. At least I can't think of any job in D.C. right now that I really feel lined up to take. I do plan this year to vigorously campaign for people running for the House and Senate, and I do as much as I can to help Republicans and conservatives get elected.
What's it like to go from running for president, a few weeks ago, to now no longer running for president? What's that feeling like?
It's like going 100 miles an hour and suddenly coming to a dead stop. It's a pretty abrupt change. But last Saturday, for example, was the first Saturday I've spent at home since last spring. So there are a few advantages. My dogs recognize me now immediately without having to be reminded of who I am. That's nice. But I had a great, incredible experience on the campaign trail that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world. I met the nicest people in America. The supporters we had were phenomenal and so very committed and dedicated and generous with their time, their contributions. My faith in people was certainly renewed and energized.
Are you giving any consideration to doing this again in 2012?
It's a little early to decide. Don't rule anything out. I look at myself and I'm saying, hey, I was one of the youngest guys that ran this time. So there's life left. The biggest reason was that, if today, things were different, might have turned out differently if it was just McCain and me on the ballot. But who knows?
Could you imagine when you got into the race, Iowa would turn out the way it is, and then it would just be
I thought we'd win all of them. So, I think when people look back and they analyze the race, what they'll see is that, we won Iowa decisively. This close to winning South Carolina. Had Fred Thompson not been there, we would have won it. We carried the bulk of those states in the South on Super Tuesday. This close in Missouri and Oklahoma. And the biggest challenge we had after that was that the press continued, no matter what, to keep saying, well, it's mathematically impossible. And when you repeat something over and over, it almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it became very, very difficult to really push forward in Wisconsin and Ohio. And the election were held today, which it is not, but if it were held today, I'd say Hillary's the one he'd probably rather run against, because there's this just sort of almost irrational movement with Obama. But by November, that could be radically different, and it could be that Obama's the better person. Because if people start analyzing what will his promises cost us in terms of reduced paychecks, increased taxes, and then it could be a dramatically different picture. And I really done. I see those guys getting a lot done. I was a governor 10.5 years. I think I'm more geared toward being a chief executive, not a legislator. And there's a big difference. When you're a legislator, you focus on the process. When you're a chief executive, you focus on the final product. And there's a difference between being the debater and the decision maker. And so, I don't think I would find that atmosphere of the Senate was appealing to me. So, you know, you're not going to go out and work that hard if it's not a job you really want to get up and say, boy, I can't wait to go to work every day. I'd have a hard time getting up with enthusiasm about going down and hearing 99 other people all try to pretend that they really were the president. The need to change our healthcare system to a health system. Because what we have today is really more disease-focused. We focus on what are we going to do when people are really, really sick. We need to be focusing on how do we keep them from getting really, really sick, preventing the disease rather than waiting until they're out of control. And of course, the theme of it deals with the ethics of healthcare. So at what level is it the government's responsibility to take the leadership role? And at what point is it mine as an individual citizen and consumer?